The power grind inside of Destiny 2 has been one of the most divisive subjects ever since the launch of Edge of Fate, with most players pretty much in the consensus that the grind is too long, with not enough activities in the portal being rewarding enough, which is what led to solo ops being pretty much the only thing players engage with. We memed about it for weeks, where we never left the mines, but yes, Caldera is where many of us lived, spending countless hours non-stop grinding the same activity. Bungie has rolled out some pretty big changes to the leveling system inside of Destiny. Now, I can't just jump up and say all of these changes are great. Hell, some of these changes are updates that they had to just revert from decisions they previously made, meaning Bungie at one point made the grind worse. However, starting with last week's LUP update, rolling into this week's 9.1.0.1 update, Bungie has made some massive changes to leveling inside of Destiny. The question is it an improvement? Are we actually leveling faster? And if we're leveling faster, what in fact is the best way to level now? Today, guys, we're going to be going over all of those changes. This is going to be somewhat of a part 2 guide to our original leveling guide, but let me just take you back to the changes that launched with Ash and Iron, this being the 9.1 update. One of the big changes Bungie made at this time was that the reward multiplier in the portal now uses account max power instead of your equipped power. If you remember our original guide, we had said that you have to have your highest power items on equipped, but this is no longer the case. Also, Fireteam power no longer reduces your reward multiplier when below 300 power. This improves rewards for low power players playing with their high power friends. The time bonus modifier now gives 5% score even if you beat the time by just 1 second, and the scoring value of locked loadout modifiers has been reduced. Now, they gave a lot of reasons for why they did it, but to be quite honest with you guys, it's because Bungie wants you to use Touche, which is a combination of locked loadouts and avant-garde. Now, let me just say this update was a complete failure in the power leveling department, so much so that people just decided not to level, myself included. And Bungie definitely noticed this, which is why in last week's TWAB, they introduced something called a LUP, or a live update, with its main goal of smoothing out the power journey. And you can see these changes here, guys. They also increased loot across various activities, essentially adding on +1 to each of the completion drops. But this change actually went live last Friday, and it was noticeable. But it was the Tuesday update 9.1.0.1 that is really the most noticeable of all the power and progression changes. First up, the featured armor scoring bonus is now granted to all players by default, no matter what gear they are wearing. They've also reduced modifier bonus requirements to hit B and higher grades slightly from 200 to 399 and significantly from 400 to 499. And getting a B and B plus and 300 to 499 now gives you at least a +1 power upgrade, and getting an A or an A plus from 450 to 499 now gives a +2 power upgrade. But then earning an A or A plus grade from 500 to 550 will now reward +1 power on your activity completion rewards. The main thing with this, guys, as you've seen, especially from the 500 to 550, is that you're always going to be getting some level bumps without the need for primes to carry you up. It still blows my mind that we accepted the 400 to 450 grind with the launch of Edge of Fate, as that entire grind was dependent on prime Ingrams, which is just pure RNG. But then Bungie also addressed prime Ingrams directly, and this is for all power bands. Players now have a chance for a prime Ingram to drop per portal activity completion reward. Now, guys, this is massive. That means if you have an activity that you're doing and it says 4 or even 5 completion drops, there is a chance for all 5 to be a prime drop. Now, keep in mind, guys, primes are different from tier 5s. A lot of people are getting tier 5s and they'll come in a stream and be like, Cross, I got 5 primes. No, fellas, that's just tier 5 drops. You're already probably at that threshold of getting tier 5 drops, especially from things like Crucible. It's the level bumps from those prime Ingrams that makes them a prime. For instance, from 450 to 500 now, prime Ingram power increases up to +3. Previously, this was +2. And again, it's still +3 everywhere else. So the point is that it's actually worth doing activities that have more completion drops, as there is a chance you could get multiple prime drops from that run. And I know you may be thinking, but Cross, why wasn't this the case before? And to that, I have no answer for you. It blows my mind that that was actually not a thing. Like, what the hell is the point of having multiple completion drops if only one of these was just going to be a prime? Regardless, though, it is now working the way it's supposed to work. Now, another big change that was made was that Bungie has increased the number of in-game activity Ingrams for many Fireteam Ops activities. We showed this before, but the Fireteam Ops activities have been greatly bumped up. Now, there are also a few other changes, like the time limits being increased for various activities. Scoring above 1.25 million now grants tier 5 completion rewards for platinum ranks. Now, Bungie took things a step further, and yesterday deployed another LUP and outlined even more future plans to improve the power grind. In yesterday's live update, they fixed an issue where Onslaught Widow's Court was not dropping the correct number of rewards. I'm not sure why, but for some reason it was only dropping one completion reward for the entire activity. So I'm glad to see this is fixed, considering we do love playing Onslaught for things like build battles. Now, this live update also added an additional base reward drop to the following Fireteam and Pinnacle activities, which you can see on the screen here. The notable ones to me are definitely Reclaim and the new dungeon layers, which we'll talk about more later. And then for the future, Bungie plans on speeding up the power climb even further, improving bonus ingrams by allowing them to contribute to the power climb until the 550 cap. And they also plan on introducing catch-up mechanics to help your friends on that power climb. I know at this point we've yapped enough. The real question, is this noticeable? Because yes, on paper, it sounds pretty good. But hell, for the past month, everything on paper sounded good until it wasn't. So are we actually getting more rewards? Is power leveling actually better? Is it faster? Am I able to play various activities now, both PvP and PvE? And ultimately, is it worth getting back on and grinding to try to get to tier 5s? Well, keep in mind, guys, my perspective is a bit skewed. I am 450 plus, but I have reached out to some of the people in our community who are in that level 300 range. First up, I want to talk solo ops. Until now, solo ops has been the most efficient way to power level. And let me just say, nothing has really changed here. It's still just as solid. You can easily complete Caldera and K1 within 3 minutes, and you can run this activity pretty mindlessly back to back and gain levels pretty quickly. Noah, for instance, who is my editor, who sits at about 388 power, was getting some big jumps. For instance, for his A rank reward, he was getting +4s. Now granted, when he hits 395, that will drop down to +3s. Now for myself, I was getting +2s at 450 plus, with the occasional prime that will give me that +3. Now something to keep in mind is, just like before, you can set your projected score at B+, and then by doing your bonus objective and clearing that run, it will then round up to an A rank. Now if you're on ultimate difficulty, you can go from B+ to A+. But again, check that score at the end, your forecasted score, guys, and you may want to add some things to it just to make sure you have a little wiggle room for when things round up. With that being said, is solo ops still good for power leveling? Absolutely. Bungie did not nerf solo ops, and in a lot of ways it's better because overall leveling has been improved. But solo ops was never my concern. My concern was actually the playlist that sucked the worst inside of the portal, and that was the Fireteam Ops playlist. The big thing Bungie did with Fireteam Ops is that they increased the number of in-game activity ingrams that drop for the mini activities in this playlist, and there is a lot of them. Now we went back and forth testing this at my level and also Noah's level. For instance, Noah, when he ran his Grandmaster Hypernet with matchmaking modifiers, he was at 393 power, and at the end he got an A rank, and it gave him +4 legs, a +4 energy weapon, which was the bonus focus for Drain, and another +4 energy weapon. He also ran a GM Reclaim at 396 power, which at the end it gave him a +3 energy weapon, a +3 heavy, and a +3 chest piece. And then back on my account at 450 plus, I ran a number of activities on ultimates. Hypernet, for instance, gave me +2 in my kinetic slots, in my heavy, and it gave me an energy weapon, which was just +1, but that's the bonus focus for Drain. Then I ran Reclaim. I got an energy weapon at +2, a heavy weapon at +2, and a chest piece at +2. Now I know we're kind of going over things that you're like, Cross, this seems pretty obvious. Bungie literally said these are going to be the drops in the patch notes. Why are you telling us this? Well, you know how things go around here, man. Bungie says, hey, you're going to get +2s, and who knows, you might be getting -20. I know I'm being a bit dramatic, but here lately, the game has been buggy. Now I will say both of these activities, though, took roughly 15 minutes. A little less for the Reclaim activity, but keep in mind, this was just matchmaking. If you had a pre-made fire team, you could definitely be more optimized. I think the biggest takeaway for this, though, is that it does feel more rewarding playing Fireteam Ops, which is something I never would have said a few weeks ago. Getting at least 2 powerful drops compared to just the 1, having a chance of having multiple primes if I got lucky. You can see yourself climbing power levels pretty quickly now simply by playing Fireteam Ops with your friends. Now let me just say, I don't think Fireteam Ops is the most optimal, or at least more optimal than solo ops. And then we have to consider Pinnacle Ops. What I will say, though, is that it's another option. And instead of you feeling like you're just throwing away your time anytime you ever entertain the thought of playing Fireteam Ops, now it actually feels like it serves a purpose. And looking at some of these nightfalls, especially some of these nightfalls here that have a chance of giving you 2 completion rewards, some of you out there are probably already trying to speedrun some of these. And yes, you could be in a situation, depending on the times that you can secure here, this could be some of the best leveling in the game. Again, that's the nightfalls. Onslaught, for instance, I don't think it's going to reach that point because because that's just too big of a time commitment. At the same time, as someone who loves doing build battles, and we love testing build battles in game modes like Onslaught, most notably due to the ad density, I love that I at least walk away with something. Now this takes us to Pinnacle Ops. Pinnacle Ops was originally the best playlist to grind for. For instance, Encore, when it first rolled out, especially with the grappler modifier, had everyone farming it day and night. But then Encore got nerfed. But to be quite honest with you, Starforge is also a fantastic mission that you can easily lock down 5-minute runs for. And I do think that Starforge is still one of the best. Now Bungie's also added in Avalon and the Presage mission. Both of those are pretty big time commitments. Kel's Fall is also another one that's a big time commitment. Again, amongst the Pinnacle Ops, Starforge, in my opinion, is the best. But this also takes us to the dungeon layers. Dungeon layers, which is what I thought originally was going to be the best way to level up, because you would just load in, get your one powerful drop, but you could just shred a boss really quickly. Turns out that's not how these work at all. Matter of fact, dungeon layers are really part traversal and part boss encounter. For instance, when you spawn in for the final encounter of Warlord's Ruin, instead of you being right there dropped in at the boss, you are instead spawned way back, essentially almost to the point of right after the second encounter. So that means you have to go through this entire traversal section to then get to the boss. And the same is for the duality dungeon. I want to mention that for the dungeon layers, guys, these are not the entire dungeons, and it's also not even the dungeon loot. It's still the Pinnacle Ops playlist loot, and these are just sections of the dungeons. Bungie says they're gonna add more stuff in the future, but to me, this just feels weird. It feels weird to kind of like spawn in, hit the traversal section of the dungeon, and then get the kill. It's not very farm friendly. And as someone who used to farm Galarin all the time, having to hit this traversal section before I can even get to the guy really sucks, even with the shortcut. I'm not really sure what the design purpose of this is. And again, this is supposed to be a leveling guide video, or at least talking about leveling, but I can't say that I'm not perplexed about the design choice for dungeon layers. To me, I was expecting Pantheon style, where we just drop in, shred the boss at various levels of difficulties, with maybe the high end offering some slight mechanical changes. Now I know some of you are gonna say, Cross, that's the copium speaking, perhaps, but let me just say I'm just not a fan of dungeon layers. To me, it kind of comes across as, well, we don't really have a permanent solution for dungeons and how we want to include them in the portal, so we're just gonna chop them up and see if they fit alongside our other exotic missions. And we don't want to make them too fast because we don't want them to be the sole focus over things like Avalon or Encore or Kel's Fall. Granted, Bungie did add an extra completion reward for all of them, so maybe over time my mind will change, but for now, I don't really feel they're very farm friendly. Now this finally brings us to Crucible, which in my opinion, in the past, was actually all right for leveling. I don't know what it is. It's like Bungie knows when my ass is getting plowed, and in doing so, they would grace me with a prime drop. Now though, you're actually getting pretty good drops, pretty consistently, I might add. You can play just PvP, and matter of fact, this week on Iron Banner, you can play PvP back to back, and you'll find that you're getting lots of good drops. And I'm not talking just tier 5 drops, I'm talking actual prime Ingram drops, those +2s and +3s. And for Iron Banner specifically, you can raise your multiplier by wearing Iron Banner pieces of armor and the emblem. And this allows you to almost bottom frag and still come out getting good rewards. Matter of fact, Bungie mentioned that they've increased the chance of earning prime Ingrams on activity completion, but they've also increased the amount of score awarded for losses, as well as if you are in 6th place. So long story short here, guys, even if you bottom frag, playing PvP is a viable way to level up, and that's across the board. And I'm actually really curious to see Trials of Osiris this weekend with all of these changes live. So this brings us to whether or not leveling in Destiny has been fixed. Well, what I will say is this: leveling in Destiny is not condensed to you just playing solo ops over and over. Is solo ops still the best way to go? If you could speed run 2.5 minute runs of Caldera, it really is hard to beat that, but it's mind numbing. With the most recent LUP last week and this 9.1.0.1 update that launched on Tuesday, what I can say is that we finally have variety. We can go do other things in the game. I can go play Fireteam Ops and not feel like I'm just wasting my time, which means I can play with other people. I can go play Crucible, even just casually, and get jumps in my level. The variety is really good. And the sweet spot you really want to get to, guys, is not level 550. You don't even have to get to 550. Really, 470 is all you need to get up to. Once you've reached that point, you're good, guys. You will get tier 5s everywhere, except maybe the raid. The raid still confuses me. Somebody explain why I can do a 5 feet raid and still not get a guaranteed tier 5 drop. All I can say on the raid front is that Bungie is probably just trying to give value to the epic raid, and that's where we're going to get the guaranteed tier 5s. But guys, you don't have to get to 550. I have no desire to grind day and night to get to 550. Yes, the higher your level goes, the easier it is to get loot, and you can even pull back. You don't even have to get A or A+ A+ rank, you'll be able to get tier 5s even below that at certain level thresholds. But I can promise you, when you get up to that 450 level, or even beyond that 470 level, you will get guaranteed tier 5s pretty much everywhere, which means the grind beyond 500s, where you're just getting the +1s with the occasional primes, is really just to flex. Overall, guys, leveling inside of Destiny 2 is much better than it's ever been. If you've had complaints around the Edge of Fate launch, just know that these things have been addressed. Whether or not the game is better to play, that's an entirely different conversation. All I can tell you is that for the first time in a very long time, you will walk away feeling rewarded for your time. And I think this is very important, because the only way you guys are going to get on board with me in addressing the real issue, which is vault space, is if you're overflowing with loot. So get those levels up, get those tier 5s, and come back to me so we can attack this issue together. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.